I'm responding to Stoodles video called Race and IQ. I just want to first of all, I just want to comment. I'm just gonna make this video based upon his analyzing his motivations for this video. Why the Stoodles want to prove that there are biological racial differences in IQ. There are biological racial differences in academic achievement. Why does he want to prove this so fervently? I should say fervently, so religiously on YouTube? Is it because he just finds IQ an interesting topic? Does he just find IQ in general an interesting topic? Why, the reasons why certain people have a higher IQ? What makes somebody have a high IQ? Is he just interested in evolutionary science? Why? I think part of the reason why Stoodles is religious about saying that there are genetic differences in IQ is because if you can establish that as a fact, if it is a fact, then you can you can attack affirmative action and claim that basically affirmative action is unfair to whites and Asians because it rejects their natural right or natural tendency to achieve high academic or intellectual achievement. It would completely annihilate the reason of racism or black attitudes towards education as a reason why blacks score lower on average compared to whites. Basically, this conversation about racial differences or racism. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that there would be no need to discuss institutional racism to a strong degree. Okay, there would be no reason to discuss it. And let's be honest, people from the right are tired of hearing about racism. They're tired of hearing about what whites did to blacks. They're tired of hearing about slavery. They're tired of hearing about imperialism. And the reason why they're tired of hearing about it is because they're tired of that past, that history, being linked to the reasons why blacks still underachieve in education. Let's just be very honest. They feel that reasoning is becoming annoying, and it's putting whites, especially whites in general, as in the role of the villain, the devil, okay, the opponent to the enemy toward black progress, the oppressor. I'll be honest with you, Stoodles is tired of seeing that image of his race in the media. So to say that it is natural for whites to have a higher intellectual capacity than black people would destroy all these arguments about racism, colonialism, how blacks feel about themselves. The race, when you put biological difference, when you say that education and intellectual achievement is directly linked to biological capacity, that argument right there eliminates at least 95% of the seriousness or severity of racism, it eliminates that severity. That, as a matter of fact, it could be used to justify racial prejudice to a strong degree, as we justify gender prejudice between men and women. And I'm going to give you an analogy. It is assumed for certain jobs or certain job tasks that men are supposed to perform those tasks. For instance, I'll give you an example at Walmart. If there's heavy furniture that needs to be stocked and put away as merchandise, and let's say that you are an overnight manager and you're in charge of stocking, it is expected that you pick a man, regardless of the slight chance there are some women that are stronger than most men. It is expected that a man is supposed to do that job. So, if we can turn that around to racially, well, if there's a task that requires strong intellectual capacity, I guess you can be justified within the race realism theory to pick a white or Asian over a black. It justifies, that theory alone can be used to justify and is reasonable enough to justify certain types of racial prejudice or racial assumptions. The bottom line is that race realism and the reason why these people do this study is because they're tired of hearing about evil white people oppressing the black race. So if you could tie in black underachievement in income, wealth, and intellectual capacity, if you could tie that in with genetic reasons or evolutionary reasons, then this talk about racism, this talk about the whites being the oppressor or the blockers of black progress is eliminated. I mean, we just have to be honest. Stoodles is a right-wing Republican who's anti-immigration, who feels that, we have to be so-called more candid about who causes more crime, which he feels is probably blacks. And basically, he feels that if blacks do not accept the race realism, that they will accept the racist conspiracy theory of whites being the oppressor, and those blacks will have contempt for whites. So he feels that if he can convince blacks of their biological intellectual inferiority, they will not have this hostility toward whites. As of right now, based upon racial equality, he feels that racial equality, which he does not believe in, is a myth that perpetrates, let's be blunt, black on white violence. So this is the reason why he wants to convince, or he believes that it's beneficial for blacks and whites to believe in a race realism theory. Have a nice day.